What's up, KMKanDrum family? This is Kelly, and you are watching Q&A with KMKanDrum. And this one, not that the other ones in the past haven't been special, but I feel like this one is a really special one because it involves a relatively new YouTube drummer out there. His name is Mike Drop Drum Covers. And just talking to him within the past couple of weeks, I've really gotten pretty close to him and his story and his journey. And I think he's a wonderful dude. I think through this interview, this two-part interview, today is part one. I want to be releasing part two next week. During this whole interview, I think you'll find he's obviously an amazing drummer, but an amazing human as well. We've had such great conversations about all different types of topics, and I think that you'll find it very interesting and very entertaining, and hopefully interesting and entertaining enough to go over to his channel, subscribe, and help him grow because he's got some really great content over there. So without further ado, here is my interview with Mike Drop Drum Covers. Let's do it. Hello, everybody. This is KMKanDrum. Welcome to Q&A with KMKanDrum. Today, I am with Mike Drop Drums. How are you, putting your name out there?
It's my younger kid's idea for the name.
Oh, cool.
Because I was like, we should try and work Mike in with, and so he was like, Mike Drop. And at first it was just Mike Drop, but then I realized that that didn't, give enough information, just some kind of a catchy, so then it's Mike Drop Drum Covers is what I'm working with, so.
That's that's pretty, it says it right there. All right there. That's great. Yeah. I didn't really think, I thought I was being clever with my name when I did KMK. KMK is my initials. And then I added I guess it's KMKanDrum. So the K is can instead of C. It's just like, I try to explain it and it's too much. And I probably should have thought of something a little bit more straightforward like yours.
You know what, though? It sticks out though, because when you see it, you have to look at it to kind of figure out what it says right away. So I think that makes it stick with you a little bit. So
well, I hope so.
yeah.
I mean, I guess it's like, the grass is never greener. It's like you want to be creative, but you also want to be direct and people know what people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, true. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I was checking out your channel. I looked through your bio a little bit, and I saw that you started in 2022.
Yes. September, I think, was my first upload, I think.
And then I'm also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm detecting a little bit of an accent. Are you Canadian?
No, I am Midwestern. I come from about 85 miles south of Chicago.
Okay.
And there is a certain, I don't know what you could call it, a drawl or something, but there is a certain Midwestern, certain pronunciation, they come out just a little bit different or something like that. So but yeah, I'm actually pretty close to the middle of the country, really.
Yeah.
Illinois. So
yeah, that's crazy. Like it's very subtle. I almost hear kind of like Canadians say a boat, almost like a little bit of that. So I wasn't sure.
Yeah, not terribly far, not terribly far.
Well, cool. So yeah, I guess the first question I have for you, which is part of my drum related questions, is when did you start drumming? And yeah, we'll start with that. When did you start drumming?
I started 1984. I was 9, fourth grade school band. I actually wanted to play trumpet, and they were like, well, if you have braces or if you need braces, some of the wind instruments might not be the best choice. And I was, I really needed them. So I remembered, I was like, I better find something else. So when I was little, probably about 3 years old, I think it was 1978, Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park was on TV. And, I just remember just like, oh, being blown away. And my favorite was the Cat, and he played drums. So I thought, well, hey, you don't need, it doesn't matter, if you need braces, if you have braces when you play drums. So I'll play the drums instead. So I started on it's just a snare drum. I think most of us might have or started, started small, you know what I mean? And then got into kit drumming afterwards,
Cool.
So 1984.
Awesome. Yeah, I started straight on the kit. I
Did
skipped
you?
the whole snare drum thing.
Oh,
What I wish I would have, because I probably would have been better than I am now. So
yeah. Well, again, I guess it's that grass is greener thing because, when I watch you, I see, um, I mean, sometimes I'm just flat out envious of, some of the licks or your meter is always is perfect and stuff like that. So I feel like sometimes we get there through different paths, you know what I mean? But we're all reaching for the same same goal. So
cool. Another thing I just popped in my head when I was reading your bio. You mentioned the big four. What is the big four?
the big four is okay. Basically, like I guess you could say 85 to 95, 1985 to 95 is my heyday, I suppose. And the big four were the most popular thrash metal bands at the time: Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer. Um, so at some point in time, people started just kind of calling them the big four. Um, so that's something that I didn't explain and probably should in the bio what that is exactly. So, but yeah, the big four was like the biggest thrash metal bands of the 80s and 90s. So, and those were like those that was my meat and potatoes. That was my, you know, when I was, a teenager and stuff, that was what I was doing, hence you know, uh
Yeah.
the horns, you know what I mean? So and that's what I spent the most time on. And I still listen to that stuff every day, basically, you know what I mean? And I got on a journey of trying to expand my horizons as far as I could. And, I realized that that's an unattainable goal to just, to listen to everything. But I'm going to try and fill it in as much as I can. But, I always come back home, and that's 80s and 90s, heavy metal. That's where home is for me. So
Very cool. Do you have a favorite of the big four?
Metallica.
Okay, cool.
Um, I mean, some of my friends pick on me, and stuff like that. So especially when we were, teenagers in high school and stuff like that, I was, very, very big Metallica fan. And, I remember like Lars, the drummer, I remember his birthday and stuff like that because I just, would get such a huge fan. And they're still my favorite band. Like I said, I've tried, to expand my horizons as much as I can, and I've, come into some fantastic music that I really, really love. But yeah, I'm still, down to bare bones. I'm still, a Metallica fan. So
So I think out of all those four, probably Lars is the most polarizing. There's so many people that love him, so many people that hate him.
absolutely.
I mean, you obviously love him.
You
Um,
know what? It's funny because I've kind of uh I don't want to I don't know if I can say I've spent time on both sides of the fence, but we did I guess I have a falling out, you could say. um back in the early 2000s. You know I I was one of the people that got burned by the Napster thing, being a Metallica fan, and it was one song that got me, but um being hindsight being what it is, and being older, wiser, more experienced, you know, um, I'm not angry or bitter about anything like that. I realize that it's just an evolution in the industry, in, music and them as artists and me as a person, again, it's just all one big journey. So it's more like that's just kind of something that happened. And I can understand, more of his point of view about that. And really, I don't know. I spent a lot of time listening to their catalog and trying to, almost, I mean, I guess you could say learn every single song note for note as best as I can. And with the newer stuff, I see, licks and chops that really have been there the entire time. The music evolved. So, I mean, pretty much every one of them had to, go with that flow. But still, like, certain things he does going into a chorus, or, the way their songs are structured and what he does, in the back half of the guitar solo, it's like, yeah, that's Lars stuff, you know what I mean? So it's still there. So for a while, I felt like, okay, yeah, you got lazy or something like that. And then I sit down and try and play it, and I'm like, it's humbling, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I can definitely not, I cannot say at all that he's lazy, or that, or that he's phoning it in, because to do that, 2.5 hours a night, 100 nights a year, 200 nights a year for literally, 40 years, hats off, I mean, to even still be doing it, So sometimes I don't think people realize just how hard it is to play at that kind of a level. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so I was angry for a while, but I'm back, I mean, and I'm like, I respect even if I respect everybody, all drummers and all, musicians. So
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to be what do they call them? Armchair coach or armchair
yeah,
GM.
exactly. You're exactly right. I spent a lot of years coaching youth sports when my older boys were younger, and you run into, I mean, you start to gain respect for people that do that. Um, and I found that, between music and athletics, there's a lot of parallels
Mhm.
in the preparation, and just the 1 in a billion chance of actually becoming a great success. And then the different ways of the different levels of success, um, and it always comes down to the way I figured, talent and desire will only get you so far. Um, Really, most of the ground is covered by discipline and hard work. You know what I mean? I feel like discipline is what makes you practice when you don't feel like it, or when you'd rather just sit in front of the TV, you know. And in athletics, it's the same way,
I think it's
So,
like that with everything because
sure.
I have a creative writing degree, and my favorite author is Ernest Hemingway. So when
Okay.
I was living in New York, they had an exhibition at I forgot what the museum was, but it basically had all of his manuscripts, and I think it's probably for each book that he's done, but they specifically had a display of, I think it was For Whom the Bell Tolls, and there was probably about like 50 handwritten pages displayed up on the wall, and I think it was the last page of that book, 50 different versions. So he had to end up choosing one page out of
Yeah,
50 different versions.
that
And his whole thing was he was like a minimalist writer. So very direct sentences. You could probably, um, for each sentence, write a paragraph about what was going on in that book. But he actually did all that and then edited himself into probably For Whom the Bell Tolls was probably like 2,000 pages, and he edited it down to like 500 pages. And so what he would say is people should only see the top of the iceberg of what you do, and
yeah,
then the remaining 9/10 of the work is hidden from everybody else. And I think it just goes for anything in life,
that
you know.
is yeah, that is very, very fair, very good. Yeah.
So
So
yeah, like it's so easy to criticize someone like Lars, but you don't know like what's going on behind the scenes, what he's done to practice to get to that level, or even the things that maybe have kept him away from being able to practice and be better. Because so many people harp on his technique and stuff like
yeah,
that.
right.
But when how old was he when they started? He was probably 17, 18 years old.
Yeah, like, well, him and James met, I think he was like 19.
19.
Yeah, like James had answered an ad in like a local, you know, just like a local scene, magazine, you know what I mean? Um, so yeah, I mean, they were teenagers, uh, and that's another thing, and you know this, the business aspect, you know, is tough terrain. You know what I mean? You got to know how to navigate that as well. And for someone like that, especially being that young when they were first starting off and everything, to kind of recognize how to handle that stuff as a kid, that's pretty impressive in itself. Because when you do cover videos and stuff like that, it's not just being a drummer, but all of a sudden you got to be a producer. You got to be an engineer. You got to
Yeah.
be a camera. You know what I mean? Uh, and that part is just as overwhelming and exciting, and difficult as just learning how to play the instrument. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So people that are great successes, or people like yourself that play multiple instruments, I mean, literally, just I guess I'm in awe. It's awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the part that I think gets overlooked is you're not just what people, I mean, I'm talking about, Metallica level. You're not just what people see. Like people only see what you put out there, but there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes. Like what if he's just like a family man that, he goes out there and he plays his heart out, but once he's off, he doesn't want to practice. He wants to spend time with his family, whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. There's
No,
nothing wrong with being able to, like, it's good enough to, I think, to be able to play the drums to Metallica. It's not easy,
yeah,
but not everybody can be Thomas Lang or
right.
Dave Lombardo, or like these people that are just crazy good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, I see all of the polarization going on. It's funny to like, it's entertaining to read and to watch all people like bickering and whatever. But in the end, it's always, to me at least, the answer is always somewhere in the middle.
Right.
And it's not even that big of a deal.
Well, and I like one of my buddies recently sent me an article where because they just started their tour recently, and during the song one, which is one of their bigger hits, there's like a triplet, double bass solo thing in the middle, and the the produced released version of the video, is spot on and just sounds awesome. And then people are like, "Hey, I was there that night, and it didn't sound quite, so clean and perfect." So then, of course, that just sparked the whole thing again, where he needs help from triggers and stuff like that. And at the end of the article, the author of it was like, "Should we even care?"
Yeah.
And you know what, that's what it comes down to. And a guy like that, like, obviously I don't know him personally, but um, I bet he just loves it. I bet he eats it all up. I bet he loves being you know, that in people's, in their mouths that often, to where love him or hate him, they're talking about him. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Free real estate up here.
yeah, yeah, who's winning?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a buddy of mine said to me a long time ago, before I even started my YouTube channel. He was like, uh, any news is good news. That old saying. And what he meant was, even bad news is good news because it gets people talking about you and it keeps you relevant.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Well, enough about him. I want to talk more about you. Um, I want to ask you some more drum questions. Um, when did you start playing a kit? Why did you start playing drums?
Well, I like
Well,
I said,
okay, so sorry. I know you were talking about the whole kiss
right,
and
right.
but
So,
yeah, expand upon that.
okay, yeah. So, yeah, when that was fourth grade, so then in sixth grade, they, as part of the natural progression, they moved us to a five-piece. Um, and we started having competitions and stuff like that. And that's when um basically I started playing a kit, just because that was what the teacher's like, now you do this. And the first stuff I did was, just like kind of big bandish swing, like a lot of marching type stuff. Um, and then right around then was when Master of Puppets came out.
Hmm.
And a buddy of mine, I had an older brother. He was 3 years older than us. So he was, I think, like 14 at the time. And so he was the older brother. So I already looked up to him, and he, gave it to me. He's like, you should listen to this. And, it was like, I was like, oh my God, I've never heard anything this fast. Um, and then the second song is the title track, and it's like 8.5 minutes. And in the middle, there's this, big breakdown that's like, oh God, it's orchestral. It's beautiful. And it just the fast, slow, the diversity, the up and down, and reading the lyrics and stuff, the depth of the content just totally grabbed me, and I was hooked. So immediately I was like, going downstairs to, where my kit was, and I'm like, hey, this is a different rock and roll, man. This is different. Um, and then just why do I play, or why did I get, take that path? To be honest with you, I don't, when I'm sitting behind my kit, that's like the one time that I never feel more authentic.
Hmm.
Um, I'm one of those people that sometimes I have a little bit of social anxiety, or, I've, you know, dealt with my ups and downs. And that's like the safest place on earth, the one place where like nothing ever, can get to me. And I feel more like myself than I do in any situation. So just that feeling of authenticity, you know, and then the reward of, I mean, there's one of the best feelings for me is working really hard at, something that I find difficult. And one day, that day you nail it, that day you finally nail it. God, man, that feeling, that's worth the past, 6 months or however long you've been trying to, because sometimes you get a song in a month, and then sometimes the song kicks your ass for a year. You know what I mean? And finally, when you get it, man, that's, you know, that. And when somebody, playing in front of a crowd, and you play a song, or you do that fill, or you do something that people have been waiting for, and when they cheer when you're done, it's like, man, that's those are the great feeling. That's a really great feeling. And so growing up, like playing in school band and stuff, it's all about the performance. You know what I mean? So I really learned to enjoy and look forward to the performances. Like my first solo on a kit, I was so nervous beforehand. I about, uh, vomited, you know what I mean? But then once I did it, it was like, oh yeah, yeah, and there's always a little bit of nervousness. You know what I mean? Like some friends and I will talk, and they'll be like, everything's fine until you hit record. You know what I mean? And I know, even I'll get some butterflies sometimes being the only one in my little studio. But once I hit record, it can go anywhere. You know what I mean? So you still feel like you're performing a little bit. So I think the excitement of it, and the reward from execution, what I mean? It's just it's addicting, I guess you could say. So
Yeah, cool. Um, yeah, it's there's a point that I've observed throughout my years of playing where YouTube became a huge thing in the drumming world. So I started playing way before YouTube happened.
mhm.
Um, and it's a different type of player from before you. There's like, we were talking offline. about being a parent and how there's the person you were before kids and the person you were after kids. It's
Right.
kind of like there's a parallel to the drum world. There was the drummer before YouTube and then the drummer after YouTube. So I think the generation of YouTuber drummers that have grown up with YouTube, at their disposal, I think a good portion of them are just fine with being a YouTuber. Like for me, when I first started my YouTube channel, for the it's been like, well, almost, it's been a long time, but for the first like 4 or 5 years, I was totally happy with just being a YouTuber. I didn't feel the need to gig or be in a band or whatever. And I feel like a lot of drummers are like that, but they started that way. So they had never had a gigging past, in their experience. You obviously have been a drummer before YouTube. Do you have that experience of being in a band and playing shows and all of that stuff? Because you were talking about how when you play a fill and you get the response from the crowd, I automatically assume, but I thought I would ask just to see if like what kind of experience you have as
I
far as that.
okay, yeah. Like I guess professionally speaking, I was in a metal band, a heavy metal band, and I was with the same guys for like a decade. And we did the unpaid gigs.
Mhm.
I like to joke around that I think really most of the gigs I've done in my life were that kind. Um, Opening for somebody who's a little more established, you know, um, playing for exposure and stuff like that. I as my kids started getting older and that started taking up more of my time and attention. I stopped even really like gigging or playing live or even really being in a band. um a lot of people I feel like or that talk to or watch interviews with, a lot of people seem like they've taken a break at some
Mhm.
point in their lives, and I also am the same. um I probably took like a good 5 year break where I really wasn't playing at all. um and then the 5 years before that I wasn't gigging or anything like that. So I did a few gigs in the past couple of years, one timers, with a couple different groups and stuff like that, kind of subbing and filling in and stuff like that. And you know what, like I said, I just do it for the fun at this point. Because yeah, I totally agree with you that there is like the pre YouTube and post YouTube, what I mean. And I actually thought, well, maybe I'll start making these videos and then I'll be totally satisfied with that. And it does fill, a great, a great need, I guess, or great space. But yeah, man, I guess, if you have played live or if you even had that experience once where, people cheered for what you just did, then it's hard to just totally, give it up, I guess, you know what I mean? So, again, like I said, I still just like to get out once in a while and do a gig or something for the fun of it. But back in the day when I was in that band, we had sent off demos and you know um we got like similar responses. You're almost there, not quite,
Yeah.
no bite, you know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So and I'm grateful for the experience. But anymore, it's just about just being able to play. And and one thing about playing on YouTube, you don't necessarily need a band, you know what I mean? And so if the guitarist starts fighting with the bass player or something like that, then it doesn't spoil my day anymore.
Yeah, totally. Yes. I mean, um, it's funny that you say that because there's I don't mean to get morbid or sad or anything, but in a couple of weeks I got to go fly to LA um, for a funeral for a longtime friend of mine who was 53 when he passed away a couple of weeks ago, and it's like
Oof.
There's things me personally, my family, we're super blessed. I mean, we're living a charmed life, but there's things that are happening around that kind of put everything into perspective, bring you back down to earth. And it's just like I get a sense from you as well that you're just happy to be able to play, kind of like how I am. Like parts of me in the past wish I would have gotten that big record deal. Parts of me wish that I was gigging and whatever and doing all that. But when I sit down at the end of the day, it's like, man, I'm should be happy with just what I have so much and to be able to play and all that. So I guess my question to you is another thing that I saw in your bio, and you don't have to get into it if you don't want to, but it really caught my interest is you mentioned that you have your foot is partially amputated.
Yes.
So yeah, I wanted to get into that because it kind of goes with this kind of theme that's kind of going on where we're just happy to be able to play.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and one thing, again, I totally agree with what you said. And I feel like with maturity, I mean, you start to gain, a little perspective. When you're young, the angry young man, you want to conquer the world, and then by the time you're in your 40s, you start to feel like, hey, let's walk down the hill and, but so, but yeah, well, I had a couple, like freak accidents in my life that where I almost died. And, one was when I was 19. And when you're 19 and almost get killed and survive, it kind of empowers you. But when you're 46 or 47 and have, something like that, almost, you almost lose your life, it empowers you in a different way. So it actually would be almost a year ago, which kind of hastened me starting my channel. I actually started my channel when I just got home from the hospital. I wasn't able to walk, and so I spent a lot of my healing time by starting my channel. So, long story short, which I'm not good at. I'm more of a long story guy. Uh, it the first doctor that looked at it didn't know what it was, thought it was something else. It turned out it was a staph infection. Um, so it was pretty aggressive. So by the time it really started to get ugly and scary, and the first thing that they prescribed me that wasn't helping it. I went to another emergency room, and they called in a specialist, and he's like, we got to cut this up now. So when he first walked into the room and he looked at it, he's like, we'll probably take the front half of the foot. I'll leave you with the heel. And I'm just like, oh my, I'm like, what is there, is there anything I can do? How can, and he's like, if a couple more days, we probably would have been taking it from the ankle. And that's when the ICU doctor said, well, the infection's in his blood. A couple more days, it wouldn't have mattered.
Wow.
So, the podiatrist told me, he's like, well, I'll tell you what, we got to get in there and cut a bunch of it out right now. But I'm going to leave the big toe. He's like, you're going to lose it, but I'm going to leave it for now. We're going to see what happens. So, I didn't know exactly what to expect. So I had ended up with 3 surgeries. And when they unwrapped it after the first surgery, I could see all the way through my foot. He had hollowed out everything between the first 2 metatarsals.
Oof.
So yeah. And at that point, I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't have time to feel sorry for myself. I see people running 20 miles an hour on blades in the Olympics. I mean, I can figure something out, and whatever you leave me, I'm going to make it work somehow. But it was scary. And when they first unwrapped it, my heart dropped. So over the next few weeks, a couple more surgeries. They ended up taking the toe too. Uh, and then I had they weren't exactly like skin grafts, but they were like, kind of synthetic skin that they would put on it. And I had to go on like on this really strict diet, and just basically because I I thought I was doing decent taking care of myself, but I wasn't doing as well as I thought. And so I ended up being able to keep everything else. So there's a lot of neuropathy. So that's been um, a challenge getting used to how the pedal feels now.
Mm.
Um, I played barefoot before because I felt like I could articulate better. I can feel things, better. And so now it's kind of a necessity just to be able to feel the pedal at all. So, so yeah, I mean, I'm lucky. I'm really lucky with, how much I ended up with. And it was, the way I look at it, it was a great wake up call. For the past year, I've been in probably the best health I've been, since I was, a teenager. Um, my mantra is, life is short, so give it a shot. Um, I kind of just, decided, hey, I'm going to try, things that could have intimidated me before, or things that, I don't want to ask myself, hey, what if I would have tried this, or what if this would have happened? I'd rather fail, fall flat on my face, and then, get up, dust myself off and say, well, what am I going to try now? You know what I mean? Then sit there and, man, I wonder if that would have worked. So, full steam ahead, you know what I mean? Full speed or nothing.
Cool.
So
So I mean, obviously you're applying it to your channel, right?
yes, well, and that's, and I've kind of started to do it on my Facebook page too. Um, yeah, definitely. All this, I mean, how much, it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience, and the rest of that iceberg underneath
Mm.
that 10%. So yeah, that's pretty much I'm not in a band or anything like that at the moment. So yeah, it's pretty much being applied to my channel. I guess I do have like an original project with the guitarist from the band I was in 20 years ago. Um, and that's another thing, I mean, hey, if we put something together, let's post it. And uh, I think what Lemmy from Motorhead said, running up the flagpole and see who salutes it. You know what I mean? You just never know.
Cool. Yeah, it's I think there's another kind of time frame of drummer too. Is the drummer, not time frame, I guess, but another category of drummer before, I would say I would say the maybe late 90s, early 2000s, cover bands weren't really a thing.
Right.
So if you were a musician, and especially if you were a rock musician, you were making your own music. You weren't really, you might cover a song in your band, but
Right.
you weren't a band full of cover songs. And then all of a sudden, cover bands became huge. And it's like, uh, maybe a good, I don't even know what the percentage might be, but a good percentage of bands that are out there, musicians that are out there, just do covers. So it's cool to hear you say that you are kind of doing original music. Is that kind of more where you lean towards?
I, you know what? I would say that would probably be like my primary project, I suppose, because that one, I mean, that's super, super fulfilling. Just writing your own music, and you know, uh, like when you like Hemingway's manuscripts, the different versions of the songs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you listen to hours and hours and hours picking it apart, and like you find 10 seconds, hey, that was cool. I'm gonna keep that. Or you hear something else and you're like, never do that again. You know what I mean? But um that's having how the song grows, and it gets legs and it starts to breathe, and what I mean, and then you figure out what you want, how you want it to sound, or what you want to do with this part, and then you got to try and execute that and stuff like that. So I mean, again, it's just the reward, from all the hard work is totally worth it. Yeah, I love playing the covers. Like you said, like, maybe your band does a couple, you know what I mean? It's the kid in me, it feeds that 14-year-old that just got Injustice for All, you know what I mean? The covers, that does, kind of feed that part of it. But yeah, I guess if I were to, um, I probably spend a little more time on the original project. But again, like I said, it day by day, sometimes I'm in this mood, sometimes I'm in that mood, or sometimes I'm trying something, it's not working out. So it's like, all right, let's just do, let's just go to this one, or let's just do a cover song because you already know it or something like that. Um, but I different kinds of rewards, what I
Yeah.
mean? So I love the feeling I get from both.
Cool. Cool.
Let's see. Do you do you have e-kits, or have you ever played on an e-kit? What are your thoughts on that?
You know what? I had a Roland. I bought it. It was like 17 years ago. I bought a Roland. It was a TD6B, and it's still like the toms were the rubber pads still.
Mm-hmm.
The snare was like one of the early mesh heads, and I tell you what, I haven't played on one recently. I mean, except for that. Um, but I mean, just the diversity, or the diversity, the usefulness, the portability. I feel like it's an awesome thing to have, and they make recording a lot easier. Um, but by the same token, for me, there's nothing, that replaces the feel of an acoustic, drum. So I'm totally, on board with them. I love the advancements. I love the way things are getting, you know, I mean, I recently got a new, kick pedal, and I'm like, wow, my last one was like 20 years ago. And just, this one's like a rocket ship, you know what I mean? So it's fun, seeing how things progress. So, when I look at the new e-kits and stuff like that, it's like, oh my, they look acoustic now. And, I guess they feel even better, so I would totally be willing to try that again. um like I said, they definitely, are convenient, real convenient, but like I said, though, just the feel of an old kid. I keep looking over at it. The feel of an old kid is that's something I can't replace.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm right on board with you. I played a real I was in a band that toured the East Coast before I moved to the East Coast, and one of the places, the backline was an e-kit, a Roland V drum kit. I used to have the same kit too, the TD6, I think it was, where the toms were the rubber, the snare was the mesh, and I just, yeah, I couldn't get into. I sold it maybe a year later,
Hmm.
and then toured and played on that e-kit, and it was nice, but I just don't know if I can throw down $3,000 on
Yeah,
hoping that it'll be close to the
that's yeah, exactly. That's why I haven't bought one in 17 years. Is yeah, uh if I'm going to spend that much on a kid, I'm going to go, top of the line something, probably. I've always, while being a Lars fan, I've always wanted a Thomas Star Classic, you know what I mean? But,
yeah.
so, but yeah, exactly. Because if you get it and it doesn't work the way you want it to, oof,
Yeah.
at least with an acoustic kit, you know what you're in for.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's because I've interviewed guys where that's their primary thing is the e-kit, and most of the time it's convenience. It's like you maybe you're not, I have a somewhat soundproof basement studio, so I can have acoustic drums, but a lot of people don't have that.
Right.
So to have the e-kit is huge. It's like
That,
necessary.
yeah, the volume control, like guys that live in apartments and stuff like that. I've always been lucky too, either with a basement or, now I'm in a loft above my garage. Um, so been real lucky, with being able to play acoustically, or having the neighbors that, like, yeah, man, really dig the music, or something like that. Uh, but or with small children or something like that,
Hmm.
if you want to work on something at 2 o'clock in the morning, volume control is a necessity.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, totally. Cool. Well, as far as the playing the kick goes, do you prefer wood tip sticks or nylon tip sticks?
I prefer nylon. I tell you what, I feel like I get a little bit more of a rebound, or quicker rebound,
Mm.
especially on the ride. Um, uh, and I have played with both, and I started off with wood tips for years. Um, but yeah, I guess I've always just kind of felt like nylon. I felt like the response was just and it could be just, it could be my all in my head, but it feels like it's just a little bit quicker of a response from a nylon tip. So
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting the different answers I get. Usually I'll get from someone who says they like nylon better, it's more the sound, that you get a brighter sound. I've never
yeah,
heard someone say that you get more of, a rebound, which is actually pretty cool. It um makes me want to get some nylons and try it out.
cool. So you're a wood tip guy.
Yeah, yeah, wood tip
Cool,
guy.
cool, cool. What kind of
Um,
stick?
well, right now I'm using the Vic Firth 5B wood tip. For a
Okay.
long, long time, I was using Pro Marks. And then I don't know if it's just me or what, but it seems like over the past maybe year or so, they've gotten not so durable. Like the rim shot area was breaking up quicker. The cymbal area was chipping up a little bit quicker. And I was like, oh man, because I think when I switched to ProMark probably like 10, 15 years ago,
Mhm.
um, I stuck with them because they were like pretty durable. And then I started seeing, I would buy a stick, and then after playing maybe like an hour a day for a month, they would just like fall apart. I was like, oh man. So I switched to Vic Firth, and marginally better. I think all sticks are pretty much like the same nowadays. It just depends on how, like, what it feels like in your hand. I still think I feel like I like the Pro Marks better. But I bought like a 10 pack of Vic First, so I gotta kind of use those before I
Yeah.
switch back.
Yeah, yeah. Cool.
um, let's see. Obviously you use a double pedal, right, for your metal stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
What
Uh,
you said you got a new pedal. What kind of pedal did you get?
well, I got a Tama, an Iron Cobra.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and again, like I said, my last pedal was a Pearl. It wasn't an eliminator. It was like, I can't, and again, it was like 20 years ago, so I can't even remember what the line was called. But it was starting to lock up on me, and it was just I was having to work harder than I wanted to. So and then I get this thing, and it's like silky smooth, and there's a spring underneath and stuff like that. So it's like, oh wow, I mean, I've been I could have been living like this years ago.
Yeah, totally cool, man. Well, do you have any plans to get any more new gear?
Well, it's kind of like an ongoing process. And another thing, after my experience with my foot, I kind of went on a shopping spree where I was like, you know what, I've wanted this since I was 13. You know, like I had the hi-hats I used to use. I actually think in my first couple of videos I'm using them. Uh, I literally got them when I was 13 years old. And they're an A Zildjian, they were quick beats, but they were, just a regular finish. And, I mean, 80s and 90s, man, you wanted a brilliant finish on your cymbals. So, but man, for 500 bucks a pair, and there's nothing wrong with these, it was, here I am, 35 years later, still playing them. And I thought, well, you know what? Just, life is short, I mean? So let's go get a brilliant pair of hi-hats. So, I did some stuff like that. One day, I'd like like I said, a Thomas Starr classic, I mean? Kind of like an heirloom kit, I mean? I'd love to be able to, custom, like color and hardware and stuff like that, but, it would, that's going to be pricey. So, a lot of other things happen in the meantime, but, I'm always kind of, I've got something, in my wish list or something in my cart or something like that. Uh, then like you end up having to replace a cymbal every once in a while, or, I've been lucky. Some of the stuff I've had for, a really long time, 20 plus years or something. But, you know, um, I like, I like snares. So I kind of, collecting drum kits is a little hard. So I try and just maybe, collect snares. I did have 8. I'm down to 6 at the moment. Um, I what I've been sticking with is an 8-inch Ludwig Black Magic. It's just like I guess like a Black Beauty basically. It's a brass. Um, but I love that snare. I mean that's um, so it's going to be tough moving on to something else. I mean, but I will break a different one out every once in a while. So um, I'm actually at the moment right now, gear wise, to where my wife thinks I have everything I need, I mean?
Of course.
But yeah, so, but there's always, something that I could try out, or, I mean, or like I said, or like a kit that I'm, one day want to get or something like that. Audio equipment, I mean, recording equipment, you know, I mean, it all fits, I mean, so sometimes you can't get that new drum because you got to get, um, some new mics or whatever, I mean? So
Yeah,
yeah.
that was gonna be my next question, is what kind of audio stuff you have, and do you want to upgrade? I mean, obviously everybody wants to upgrade, but like what are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I've got a couple buddies that were sound guys. Um, and when one of them pretty much, he decided to, hang it up, he sold me a set of Shures. And so there's like an SM57 on the snare, and I think, oh, you know what? I can't remember what's on the toms, but there's Shure mics, and he gave me a good deal on them and stuff like that. Um, I got a Soundcraft Signature 22 soundboard, um, and then I've got a MacBook that right now I'm running GarageBand, and literally just yesterday I graduated to Final Cut Pro for video editing, and so there might be a lull where I'm not putting out any videos for a little bit while I try and get this figured out. And then one of my sound guy buddies is trying to talk me into upgrading, from GarageBand too, which I mean I'm fully willing to, I've kind of gotten used to having a lot of Apple products, what I mean, and it's real convenient. Um, so the way the two programs communicate is seamless. So I kind of like, especially at the beginning, I wanted easy, user friendly, what I mean? So now I'm kind of finally getting to that point where I'm like, okay, I'm a little bit more experienced where I can start taking that next step. So, but since I went with Final Cut Pro for video, I mean, I'll probably, end up sticking with Apple for audio. But I've been really impressed with GarageBand, the things you can do with it. You know, it's not like it was 20 years ago when you had a 4-track recorder,
Yeah.
and your drums sounded like cardboard boxes or something like that. So now, that's that's half of the challenge, and half of the fun and reward is that just getting your drums to sound good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. What kind of heads do you use on your drums?
I've always been a Remo guy. Um, right now I'm using coated emperors
Okay.
on top and bottom, and or I mean up and down. And then on the bottom, on the rack toms, I've got ebony ambassadors. And then on the snare, I'm using the coated emperor with the black dot under.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
That's kind of been, I've experimented with snare heads, and that's one I keep coming back to because it just seems to last me the longest. I played on some Evans heads on other kits, and you know, I really liked them. But I've just you know, I stick with what I know, I guess. So I've just always, just played Remo, so I still just kind of do.
Yeah, that's cool. For a long time too, I was like, I stuck to Remo just because that's what I knew. I knew all the different types of heads and whatever. And then, a bunch of my buddies were saying, you should try Evans, you should try Evans. So I got a pair of Evans. I didn't know what I was doing. They didn't sound good to me, and ended up figuring out on my own that the Evans that I got were the equivalent of maybe not so light and thin as a diplomat, but somewhere in between a diplomat and an ambassador.
Okay.
So they were really light heads, and again, it's like you were saying, I just didn't know what I was getting. I didn't know anything about Evans and their series and how they name things, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So I just recently, the red kit that you see right there,
Okay.
I recently, cleaned it up and whatnot, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a second stab at Evans. I'll do my homework this time.
There you go.
So I ended up getting the equivalent, I guess, which would be like the Remo pinstripes. And they're amazing. The heads are awesome.
Okay.
So yeah, like I totally understand you sticking with Remo because that's what you know. Because again, it's like these heads aren't cheap. They're pretty expensive.
Right.
And it's kind of a bummer when you get something and it's like not what you thought it was gonna be.
Exactly. And that's a very, valid, excellent point, is not knowing, how they term their lines, and knowing what's the equivalent of an emperor, or what's the equivalent, to where, like you said, if you swing and miss, then man, that's so yeah, it makes you want to just go back with what you know.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll experiment, with some Evans heads, but yeah, I'll definitely do my homework first. So,
Cool. All right. Well, I want to ask maybe one more drum question and then move on to some other topics. But I always like to ask this one because I get some really varied and awesome answers. I kind of think I know what you're going to answer, but I want to, ask it anyways. If you were Dr. Frankenstein and you could take the limbs and the brain and the soul and all these different parts of different drummers, which drummers would you take from and what parts would you take from and create this Frankensteinish monster drummer?
wow, that's a pretty cool question. Well, obviously,
Oh,
yeah.
well, you got Frankenstein back there.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a couple of drawings for my kids and stuff like that.
Sweet.
Yeah, you know what? Obviously, Lars is going to be in there. And what I would take from him would be the syncopation, hitting the snare on the ands instead of on the ones and twos, or twos and fours. Some of his fills, they're not, like, I guess you could say, traditional, straightforward, like da, 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 da. Some of them move around and are almost melodic, in their composition. So, I would, the way I figure it, Metallica, a lot of times you can improvise, but you have to still paint within the lines, because because of the timing and sometimes the syncopation of things. If you get lost improvising, then you just, totally bomb the song, you know what I mean? Buddy Rich is probably like I guess if I had a goat drummer, I would say would be him. Although if you wanted to say it was, Gene Krupa or, Max Roach or somebody, I couldn't argue with you. But with Buddy, when I went to school and started learning like music theory and stuff like that, and then that's when I really started I wanted to broaden my horizons and get into classical and everything. I saw Buddy Rich at the top, and I think it's West Side Story. He does a drum solo, and it was like, because being a product of the 80s and 90s, we had 9 pieces to our kits, what I mean? And here he is with 4, making it sound like it's 15. And so it was like, like the proverbial light went on, what I mean? And then I was like, ooh, if you can do more with less, then I feel like that, sharpens your skills. So I would say for Buddy, the improvisation, the improvisational skills that he had, and just the ability to take 4 drums, because they always say even when he had a second floor tom, he put his drink on it.
Yeah.
So just to be able to make that many sounds with that many drums, it like I said, it forces you to be creative, Dave Lombardo, the Slayer part of the big 4 was always the heaviest and meanest, I guess you could say. And so the drumming was, really, it was, in a way, as far as rock and roll goes, it was revolutionary, so from that, I would take, that machine gun double bass work, and the ability to be able to play at 220 for 5 minutes, what I mean? So yeah, Mike Portnoy is another one of, my favorites. God, the patterns and the technical proficiency at, which he plays, is, that's something that's awe-inspiring. So just tooling around with any of this stuff, it makes me feel like a beginner, what I mean? So, but it's nice to get out there and try that stuff. So yeah, for him, I would definitely take like the complex patterns and the ability to play in complex time signatures. So and you know what, I could probably go on and on and on and on. I guess literally everybody you've heard either, leave some kind of impact on you, so some, the drummer whose name I can't remember, what I mean?
Yeah.
Those guys, Elvis's drummer, what I mean? Real powerful live performer, so yeah, I guess I'll stop there, but I mean, I again, I try to be a sponge, what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to leave people out, especially when it could be something so small but impact you so big. And then it's just like you gotta try to fit them into the sandwich and you just can't.
Yeah.
I totally understand. But yeah, that's an awesome Frankensteinian drummer.
Cool. Awesome. I bet he sounds good.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I'm gonna go to this next section where it's a bunch of job related questions. So I'm gonna see if you're fit for the job.
Okay.
What are your personal strengths?
My personal strengths would be improvisation, and I can adapt well to the ebb and flow of numerous other musicians. One of my, basically I don't like during a performance, I don't get caught off guard very easily. And if we, if the set needs to run another 5 minutes longer, you need a drum solo, or you want to just hash out a blues jam, you know what I mean? Hey, let's do it right now. You know what I mean? Let's, whatever happens, whatever comes out, comes out. So I would say one of, my strengths would be adaptability and improvisation.
So do you, I mean, I've only really watched some of your covers. Do you have any videos on your channel where you're soloing?
I do not. That's kind of like a work in progress.
Okay.
I I try to ride that balance between, putting out as best of a video as I can, and but sometimes I feel like, if I try to chase perfect, then I'll never put anything out. So as far as the solo goes, I, that's something, especially since there won't be any accompaniment. I really, really am trying to fine tune the sound. I don't want to, I will compromise, but I'd rather not compromise on the sound of each of the drums. The 12-inch one, that's kind of a problem child for me. Um, so and then again, the execution of the solo. Sometimes I just sit down and just let something happen, and other times I try to have like a prepared solo. So I'm, you know, kind of debating on how, exactly how I want to do it, because, again, like I said, a solo is a little bit more, because it is just you. It's a little bit more of people are going to pay more attention to it, or they'll remember it more. So I really, really want to make sure I do it right when I do. So I plan to, and like I said, it's a work in progress.
Cool. It's funny how you mentioned your 12-inch tom being the problem child, because um even for someone like me who, I hate tooting my own horn, but I do get a lot of compliments on my sound. But I also have problem childs all the time. And I always have to try to, and that's kind of, I think that's why my sound is like pretty good. It's because I've been able to figure out how to fix my problems, and kind
Yes.
of put band-aids over them or whatever the case is. But yeah, I totally have problem childs all the time. My 16-inch tom, um, I don't even know if it's the tom or if it's the mic or what. I just somehow like it always just sounds pretty bad, and then I have to like do all of this crazy stuff to it to make it sound like decent. But yeah, I totally get it. I get how you want it to sound good, and especially when there's no music, and if you hit that problem child, you don't want it to sound like a problem. So yeah, I totally
Yeah.
get it.
Cool.
Okay, so what about what are your weaknesses?
Weaknesses. Sometimes sometimes I lack confidence. Um, and in the past, that has kept me from maybe trying opportunity going to tryouts, or rehearsals, or stuff like that. And I don't know if this is just me, or if it's an 80s metal drummer thing, but sometimes, a certain part of the song, maybe I have a tendency to step out of meter a little bit, maybe speed up a little. Um, especially like during a live performance. So I had to really work on maintaining that steady click. And for a while, I even played with a click, to try and lock that down. And I feel, that I'm way better than I was, years ago at keeping meter. But that's one thing that playing with a recording, I noticed early on, is that, it's unforgiving. When you're playing with, four other people, you can kind of feel, and so everybody just kind of, and then the crowd never notices. But a recording is unforgiving. So, if you have an it's like, well, back to let's take it from the top.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that as a weakness, if I get distracted, or get too wrapped up in the emotion of the song, then I can, kind of start to, my meter can float a little bit. So,
Yeah, interesting. I think that's natural. Um, and in fact, a lot of times it's so funny because again, I don't know if this is a generational thing or what, but when I was in at the height of me being in bands would be probably late 90s to mid 2000s, and none of us, not drummer, me, not guitar player, not singer, nobody wanted to work with a click. Nobody, they just wanted to be able to feel how the music was organically. And it might be, you might record the song what at one tempo, and then when you get on stage, be feeling the song a completely different tempo.
oh yeah,
And even from gig to gig, it might change. So and then now it seems like every clip I see on Instagram or whatever, you could tell like every musician has in ears. They're playing along to some sort of click track where it's not just backing tracks in the music. You have lights synced up, and you have your whole show is synced up to this metronome. You can't you can't stray away from it. So it's
right.
just interesting to me how times have changed musically. Um, Not that it's any worse or any better or anything like that. It's just it's like completely different. It's just fascinating to me.
Well, yeah, and I would have to agree wholeheartedly. I don't know if it's better or worse, but yeah, it's different. And I feel like it's just another way things evolved. Um, you know, some of them, like, okay, one of my favorite bands is Tool, and I can't believe I forgot to mention Danny Carey in the Frankenstein uh, conversation. So Four Limb Independence, at that level is just mind boggling. But or like Pink Floyd, Tool. One night the song is 6 minutes long. The next night it's 14. Another time it's 4 minutes long. They've done lounge versions of their own songs to just to totally mix things up. And obviously when it's your music, you can do whatever you want with it. But yeah, if you're jobbing and everybody is synced up to the metronome, um, yeah, there's not a lot of room for for I guess creativity more, but yeah, it is funny how things have kind of changed. I feel like working with a click, it makes you better, what I mean? But again, the feeling or the emotion that happens at the moment during certain songs, what I mean? I feel it's important though too to be able to have a little breathing room.
Totally. I mean, when one of my teachers, when I think I was in college, and I was learning how to do percussion instruments, and basically he said, as a drummer who already knows how to drum, you might have preconceived notions on how to play percussion, but you should throw all those things away and learn all the rules of percussion. And then once you know all the rules, you know how to break them. So I think when I apply that to using a metronome, it's like, yes, learn how to play along to a metronome, learn how to so that your meter is as perfect as it can get, so that you can break the rules and learn how to, you know, play behind the beat, play ahead of the beat, slow the
Yeah,
beat down if it needs to, like, because when you have that foundation, you can then play around with tempo. If you don't have that foundation, it's really hard to bend the rules and break the rules and whatnot. And I just feel like nowadays people are so married to the metronome that they don't break the rules. Like, you're supposed to learn the rules and then once in a while break them, and that kind of like almost shows your experience. Like the good, the ones that can tell that your meter and breaking away from it, that's like even more impressive than just staying on meter the whole time.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's also probably one of the more difficult things sometimes is stepping out and coming back in, and knowing exactly you know, when to go back and forth. But you know what? It adds so much flavor to things, and makes each performance an individual, experience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, I know that Taylor Swift was in town like a couple months ago, and I think she sold the Lincoln Financial Center, which I think is like 70,000 seats. I think she sold out like 5 or 6 nights in a row. And I just wonder, is every single show exactly the same, played exactly the same? And it's like, man, hey, she's Taylor Swift. It works for her if that's the case, if that's what's going on. But if I was lucky enough or rich enough to go to every single show, I would kind of want to see something different.
I would, yeah, exactly. At least a different set list, I mean, or, and, again, some of like the bands that, try to do different stuff with their songs from night to night, or, I always used to like it when they would, someone would say, okay, well, we're working on this one. It's going to be on the next album, but it isn't out yet. And you get to hear like a rough version of it. I always thought that was kind of cool too. Um, so yeah, I want to say, I think it was Mudvayne's drummer said that if he was allowed too much breathing room, then he would you know, fall apart, I guess.
Huh.
So he actually needed the uniformity of the set. He said I could, I think it was a Modern Drummer interview. He said he could sit down and play their entire set right now, note for note, because it's the same every night. So I mean, that worked for him. But I remember at the time thinking, oh, I don't think I could ever do that. You know what I mean? Because shoot, some of that stuff, is it ever the same way twice? You know what I mean? Some of the fills, or some of the, I mean, there's always something different.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I think Rick Rubin, he said that when producing, if your song doesn't have at least 2 or 3 mistakes in it, then it's not finished.
Hmm.
So, it adds the human quality, you know what I mean? And, so I figure my drumming definitely has a human quality to it. So.
Yeah, mine too. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I remember listening to, I think he did Blood Sugar Sex Magic, and that
Mm,
was one of the albums that really, like, for me, drumming wise.
sure.
And then everything, every album after that, I believe, was just so dull, Chad Smith wise. But
Okay.
he's grown to be this like icon of a drummer, kind of like almost the same as Travis Barker's status. Like he's just like, you don't even need, like, you can know Chad Smith without even knowing the Chili Peppers necessarily.
True. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, I wonder why, because to me his peak was Blood Sugar Sex Magic. Everything he's done after that is kind of mediocre, at
Okay.
least when you compare it to Blood Sugar Sex Magic.
Sure.
Like if he would have started after Blood Sugar Sex Magic, he would be like a fine drummer. He'd be okay, like great. But because he has Blood Sugar Sex Magic on his resume, that to me is like the epitome of Chad Smith drumming. Like just awesome drumming. He's got feel, he's raw, he's also technical. It's like the whole package.
Right.
So, and I know Rick Rubin did that, produced that record. So I wonder if he had anything to do with Chad Smith and his drumming. And if I wonder if he produced records after that. It's weird. I like to try to figure out why things are the way that they are, and if certain people have a lot more influence than you might think they have as a producer or whatever. Because
Right. Right.
as a drummer, you think, oh, you just go into the studio and you play whatever it is you're playing. But no, a lot of times when you go into for me, even like I was in, I've been in so many different bands, and most of the bands, they just let you do whatever you want. But there's some bands that I've been in where the singer or the songwriter or even the producer will put a lot of input into not just the drums but everything.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy to me. Like just talking about Rick Rubin, I just the whole thing like kind of came into my head, just wondering like how much influence people have on certain things throughout history. It's just a topic that I'd always love to like dive into.
And yeah, and especially with iconic albums like that, you know what I mean? And I feel, a lot of times, some producers, like you said, have a lot more input, and I feel like they bring out something different from, the artist than would have come out, with another producer or otherwise. Um, being a Metallica fan, thinking about like, the difference in production between And Justice for All and then the Black Album, when Rasmussen and then Bob Rock, you know, you they were shooting for something different and they got it. And but the his influence on certain things, literally just kind of changed the direction, that heavy metal went, I mean, in the 90s. So yeah, that's a rabbit hole of a question.
So I heard, I don't know where I heard it. I know it was a long time ago, and I think all the drummers, because I was in high school band too, and there was like 4 or 5 drummers that would cycle through songs and whatnot. But when we had heard that for the Black Album they taped a quarter to the bass drum, we all started doing that. Was that true? I'm
I
sure you would know more than I did.
you know I actually haven't seen anything that will confirm that, but I can confirm the wave of teenage drummers that were doing it. 'Cause I remember like we had this it was like an 18 and under club basically where the teenage bands could go play and stuff like that. And just about everybody that went through there, I remember one guy had silver dollars, taped up to his heads and stuff like that. Um, in my journey to try and reproduce some of these sounds, um, and it's an ongoing process. One thing that I got told by a couple of different people just in different forums was compression, compression, compression. And like recently I kind of got the snare sound I've been looking for, and which is one of those victories that really, pump you up. But somebody who said that, well, like you may take your bass drum and turn the compression all the way up. Well, what Lars does is takes a multipressor and takes every wavelength and then compresses that to the point of, uh, no return basically. And then that's how he gets that kick sound. You know what I mean? So, the 50 cent piece or the quarter, you know what, I like I said, I've never actually seen anything that confirms it.
Mm.
But there is a distinctive click clack, to the kick in that album that was previously not present. So, but no, I remember, absolutely too. Everybody was trying it, and when acoustically speaking, like when you're in the room, you can really tell the difference.
Yeah,
But back
totally.
then, when you're recording with a 4-track or something like that, it didn't really help much.
Yeah. I almost wonder if that's like one of those things that it's like a marketing ploy where they just kind of put it out there and see if it grows legs, because it
Yeah,
worked for me. I still remember it. But
yeah.
we were all doing it. It's just a crazy thing.
Well, one thing I don't think any of us will do is leave the snares off. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
what I mean? I don't think he'll do that again either. So
Yeah, man. There's so many things that kind of just like spark conversation with him. It's just
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I
So
think
like,
he will always be relevant throughout drum history.
you know what? And exactly, like I said, I mean, how could you be more successful? You know what I mean? Like people like Buddy Rich or, that we talk about today, we still, listen to, his stuff. that's kind of immortality. And at that level too, there's a reason why, you know, like generational talent. There's a reason why, not everybody that even plays drums can do that. So with Lars, even if, I mean, he's definitely not without talent or skill, but if he's not, the most, creative in the world or not the hardest worker, you cannot say that he isn't successful. And like you said, consistently relevant. You know what I mean? So I always say that Metallica is kind of like the Beatles of heavy metal, to where, I think that's kind of like a forever thing, where decades after they're, done, there'll still be, the occasional Metallica album getting bought or something like that. So I mean, sometimes I feel like when people, want to criticize or everything like that, I almost think it's like sour grapes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was playing in bands and trying to make it, and the White Stripes coming out, and Meg White, and she's just like, back then I was like, how can they be so popular? And she's just a horrible drummer. And it's like, now that I'm older, you're older and you have perspective and whatnot, and it's like it's just how things go sometimes. And it's so much like, it takes so much like effort and energy to hate on somebody else
true.
than to just accept it and be like, you know what, good for her, good for them. you know Even if not everyone can be a Buddy Rich, not everyone can be like this super talented drummer, and for the White Stripes, you shouldn't have someone like a Buddy Rich playing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's Lars is a good example too. I mean, you can't tell me, of a better Metallica drummer. You know what I mean? Especially with him on the business end and on the creative end. Um, he doesn't write riffs, but he's very in on the arrangement of things and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I feel like you could definitely say that they wouldn't be the band they are if he hadn't been a member.
Totally.
So Meg White, that's another, sometimes polarizing, drummer, I mean, and I can't say that, she's, this technically, superb drummer either, but every once in a while she would do something that just really fit the song.
Yeah.
Um, that I probably wouldn't have thought of, or maybe it was just maybe it was so simple it was elegant. You know what I mean? So like you say, as you get older, you start to, I guess, open your mind a little bit more to, to you understand the difficulties of what it takes to get there. So you kind of are ready to give a little bit more, more slack, I guess, when someone who is just a human, does something that doesn't, make everybody stand up and, and cheer. So
Yeah, and I think too it gives hope for people who aren't these immensely insane talented drummers. Like, when you go onto Instagram or any kind of social media or YouTube or whatever, and it seems like great technical drummers are a dime a dozen now. Like, everywhere you look, it's like the drummers that are up there can do everything. So it's almost refreshing when I was scrolling through Instagram, I think it was, and then I saw the Black Keys drummer, and he was talking about how one of their popular songs, he has to play the floor tom like over here because he can't play it open ended. And I was like, whoa, really? Like, that kind of, it almost blew my mind. Like, you're playing the same hand,
yeah,
but you're playing the tom over here instead of over here. I would think it would be easier to play over here, but no, he can only play it over here. And I was like, that's so crazy to me. Like, it blew my mind. Like, I was like, wow. And then this guy is like immensely successful drummer, huge band and whatnot, and here he is like having to play like unorthodox. And I was like, wow, that's so awesome and refreshing, because nowadays, drummers can play open-handed, cross-handed, ambidextrous,
Yeah.
traditional, they know the whole gamut. And it's like, okay, well, you can't be surprised anymore. And it's almost like a regression, but refreshing at the same time. And like, to me, like, that was awesome. I was like, oh wow, that gives someone like, not like me, hope, because I'm not in a band trying to make it, but it
Right.
might give like people who are, not so talented as like all these other drummers that are out there. It might give them hope that they could still like find some sort of success playing with the talent and the hard work that they're, putting forth, and they don't have to be some virtuoso.
Right. Absolutely. And it's just a matter of, again, being the right drummer for the right band. Um, you know, I kind of lost my train of thought for a second there, but talent, like I said earlier, talent and desire, they don't really actually get you all that far. It's the hard work, So um if okay, I kind of lost my thought there, but um like you said, with a younger guy growing up, um like how many drummers are left-handed but play right-handed because that's what they learned or that's what they saw. um it is nice to see some individuality out there, um that, like you said, that isn't so overly technical or something like that. I mean, as impressive as it is, um I feel like some things can get so technical it almost gets boring, because after a while it's hard to follow all those patterns and stuff like that. And I feel like when you're the right drummer for the right band, sometimes, I mean, ACDC, pretty much everything's in four. It's not the most complex stuff, but man, does it get people up, and dancing and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So, talent, desire, hard work, but luck, what I mean? And you need a little help sometimes from somebody, who is a little further than where you are now. Um, just looking, I mean, I've just been doing this not quite a year, and I see, newer channels popping up, or, guys seem like they're just kind of starting off, and it's like, oh yeah, I know exactly, where you're at, and especially with my, experience with my foot and everything like that. I just try to be like a fountain of positivity, and, you know, trying to, encourage everybody, hey, that, what a great job, or, your drums sound really good, or, that's a great camera angle and stuff like that. Just because, like you said, it's kind of like a family. And one thing, how the industry seems to have evolved is, 25 years ago, nobody wanted anybody else to succeed. Because it was all, you against the world. And now, in the YouTube generation and in the online generation, it seems more like it's like, you help me, I'll help you. He helps us, we help him. Everybody give, props to each other. And then, I think I saw a quote that said, only a fool wants his own elevator. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I'm, kind of trying to embrace that too, So, yeah, it's fun, it's cool. I'm having the time of my life, Uh, so yeah,
I think that's probably the most important thing, is having fun, doing something that is like an outlet for you, it keeps me sane.
yeah,
Um
yeah,
yeah, it's just and so the icing on the cake for me is just to share it with other people and get their feedback and give my feedback to them. And like you said, just kind of you know as a whole community, just like to see everybody rise up. That elevator thing is perfect. Like, I
yeah,
love that saying. That's awesome.
yeah. I mean, like I said, it's like, a bunch of people helping each other climb. What I
Yeah,
mean?
totally. That's awesome. Yeah, it's like like, I guess Everest, right? Everest. There's already somebody went to the top, so it's not like you're going to be the first. So now
Right.
everybody just helps each other out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And hope you don't end up, getting frozen somewhere.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why anyone would want to do that.
I mean, I guess I can understand the thrill, you know, but yeah, no, not me. I mean, I'll look at the pictures they take, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So,
Cool, man. Well, geez, we only have a few minutes left. Didn't get through all the questions that I wanted to. So maybe we might have to do this one again.
yeah,
A part two or some. Oh, I wanted to ask you, do you are you acquainted with the wheelchair drummer?
no, no, I'm not.
I'm gonna have to hook you up with him. He's an amazing story. I actually did a two-part interview with him because his story is so amazing, and we just didn't have enough time
Right.
the first time through. But he's wheelchair guy, I think from the chest down. So he only has use of his arms. He has to do all of this crazy stuff just to get into the set to be able to play.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, he's just like a super cool guy.
Yeah.
I think he's based around the Winnipeg area. But yeah, he's an amazing dude. He's got such a great story. Kind of reminded me of your story. So I think you guys would be like really cool, like to hook up and meet up
Cool.
and stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, but yeah, just the community out there. I hope you guys watching go to Mike's channel, check it out. It's a great channel, great guy. Um is there anything that you wanted, any thoughts that you had that you wanted to kind of sum up, or like maybe what would be something uh that you could share that you've learned through your relatively short journey on YouTube, but long journey on the drums, that someone, um, you know, watching this who might not have your experience, maybe give them some heads up on some things before we like call it quits.
Sure. You know what? The one thing I would say is just, you gotta stick with it. You've got to keep trying. Nobody's born, with the ability to just sit down and start playing. I mean, everybody has to start somewhere. So, you've got to try it. They say like, courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is having fear and still doing it. So I feel like really finding, that bit of courage in yourself might be the most important part. Just being brave enough to keep, failing really until you finally, get it right. And if you stick with it and if you work, and if you have the patience with yourself, then you will get there. You will be able to play, just about any song you can think of, and whether you want to do it for a career or whether you want to do it you know, just for a little enjoyment, here and there in the afternoon. Just have faith in yourself. Because like I said, nobody starts right off, being a virtuoso, even they had to practice, So just have a little courage and have a little faith.
Cool. And then closing thoughts, do you have anything that you're working on with the channel? Is there anything that we should be looking out for or looking forward to?
Well, like I said, I did just graduate my video editing software. So my next one is gonna kind of have a different format. Where like up to date, there's either just been one angle or picture in picture. So I'd like to get to where I've got multiple angles switching back and forth between the views. But again, like I said, I've got to get all that nailed down. So hopefully, before long, maybe next couple of weeks, I should have a couple coming out with the new software. And they should be ones that were, one of them in particular was a pretty big challenge to me. It was a request from somebody. It was a song I'd never played before. So I hadn't even heard it before. So I had to learn it, you know, so that's been fun. So
Those are the
hopefully,
worst.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, hopefully the next few weeks, maybe a month, I'll be able to start pumping them out again, and there'll be kind of you'll be able to hopefully tell like a graduation in techniques. So
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I love I think more than anything, because the playing is always there. But I think in my experience, from when I started the YouTube channel till now, I don't think my playing has gotten any better, but I know for sure my sound and my video editing and all that stuff has gotten
oh yeah,
better. So I love seeing a channel kind of evolve into, getting better and better and better with each and every, maybe not so much of each and every video, but segments of time.
right.
I love seeing a channel progress and get better. So that's awesome.
Well, I was gonna say, I look at my first couple of videos, and yeah, I mean, there's a there's a definite progression, especially in sound, So yeah, so hopefully I just keep on improving, So
Cool. That's awesome. Well, guys, please check out Mike Drop Drum Covers.
thank you.
Subscribe if you love his stuff, just like I have, and help to grow his channel because it's one of the good ones. Mike, thanks for joining me, man. It was awesome having you.
Thank you so much. This was just a fantastic experience. I had a blast. I have to admit, I was a little nervous going in, but you know, you're a real personable person. Made me feel comfortable right away. And I really appreciate the opportunity, and I thank you for helping me promote my channel. So thank you.
Yeah, well, hopefully it works. Hopefully you get some more love out there because man, it is one awesome community, and yeah, there's really nothing like it out there.
Yeah, you know what? Drummers are a different breed. So, I mean, our brains are a little different than other people. So, yeah, it makes sense that it would be just a little bit different from other people.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I will be signing off here, and yeah, thanks again, man. It's been so awesome.
Great. Thank you so much.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording, but I'm not gonna hang up. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I put out a new video. Also, check out my website, www.kmkandrum.com, KMKANDrum.com. And if you really, really want, head on over to my Patreon, link in the description. I've got a ton of benefits for anyone who becomes a patron, a lot of cool extra content that you can't find here on YouTube. And also, check out these cool videos that I've done in the past, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.